Hey folks, I'm Gene Delasala. Welcome to Audioholics. We have a special CES 2018 edition. We sent a one-man away mission to go and explore all the new great products, in this particular case, soundbars.
Hey folks, Marshall's here, back from CES, feeling rejuvenated, refreshed, and hopefully I'll be able to keep all the info straight. I only saw about, 700-800 products this weekend.
How many miles do you think you walked in a couple of days?
I got tempted to sort of put the pedometer on my phone and get it going. I wouldn't even know where to start. I will say that my knees and my feet were just so hot at the end of the day,
Yeah.
like the muscles were just worn warm. So glad to be back in a chair and stationary.
I think next year we might have to get you a Segway, my friend.
At least some rollerblades. I think I'd look really good on rollerblades.
So what do you want to talk about in this video? I think we should focus on one particular category of product.
Yeah, so I think that's the best way to try to take. Again, there's hundreds of thousands of square feet of, I forget exactly how many square feet, but almost 200,000 people, thousands of booths. I think the only way to really try to wrap our heads around this is to look at this category by category and maybe dive a little bit deeper. The products that we're going to talk about today aren't guaranteed to be the absolute best that's out there. In fact, many of these haven't even hit the market yet. They're still in the prototype phase, but we're going to tackle some of the most interesting things that we've seen. And one of the most interesting things, the one that people were talking about, was from a company called Sennheiser, very well known for headphones, well known for microphones. And so now they're getting back into the home theater production side of things, and they're introducing really a flagship soundbar by anybody's standards. And they're calling it the Sennheiser Ambeo, and it is a prototype, so that name might change. What's unique about this compared to other soundbars? No subwoofer. No rear channels, wired or wireless. It is a true soundbar. One big chunk of speaker sitting at the front of the room.
So in order for it not to have a sub, it has to have pretty substantial sized drivers in an enclosure, correct?
Absolutely. In fact, it has a grand total of 8 mid-bass drivers. I didn't have my tape measure with me, but it's over 3 feet wide, I would say. And it's tall and deep as well. Not crazy tall and deep, but you're looking at probably 7 inches tall, 8 inches deep, maybe not that much, but it's not your average hang underneath a television type of soundbar. It's going to sit underneath the TV on a platform or a media stand of some kind.
Well, that's something I'm always concerned about, because you look at most people that are doing soundbars and they're doing it with their flat panel displays. In most cases, they want to mount it right under the TV. And I've heard consumers talking, whether you're at Best Buy or just in general, they don't want a soundbar that's more than a few inches deep. So how do you convince the average Joe to take a bazooka like this and put it on some type of a tabletop below the TV? That's got to be a hard sell.
Well, yeah, and that is the question. The question is, who is this soundbar for? We'll dive a little bit deeper into this real quickly. So this is a soundbar that does automatic setup. It comes with a microphone. It spits out a little test chirp, and as a result gets an idea of the measurements of your room. Again, because there's no rear channels, it's using, and they claim no DSP, reflection only. It's using those drivers to bounce both side and rear channels, as well as 4 overhead channels. They claim they can get 4 distinct overhead channels. And it's doing all this, again, just using reflection. So that means that you need a square room, and it needs to be at maximum 4 meters by 8 meters by 8 meters. So give or take 12 feet tall by 26 feet wide and deep. That's a good sized room. Most people are going to have this, but in order to get all the channels, you also have to have a back wall. So for folks that are looking to put these into these open concept homes where maybe the living room bleeds into the kitchen, that's how our house is, you're not going to get the best performance unless you have 4 walls and a ceiling.
Yeah, and that's in most cases. And I'm from Florida. Most of the houses here have rooms inside of rooms, so it's very difficult to get a back wall in a typical family room. So yeah, there's going to be some compromises here for sure.
Standard complement of high-end soundbars, you've got 3 HDMI, you've got an optical, you've got analog, there is a Bluetooth and Wi-Fi as well. But this is what it comes down to. Brass tacks. In terms of the content that we looked at, we listened to the Amaze demo, we listened to a soccer game, we listened to some music by Imogen Heap. None of these I was familiar with enough to sort of comment on the quality of tonality, except to say that it sounded good. It was certainly passable. But this is what I will say about this soundbar. It was the best I have ever heard, without any sort of qualifier, the absolute best I've ever heard, at least in this regard, sound channel positioning. During the Amaze demo, which is set up to really help you identify the different channels, including overhead channels, that thing was fantastic. It had me fooled, and they had it set up in a room with discrete left, right, discrete overhead, discrete rear and surround, and it became quite the auditory illusion, thinking that out of this soundbar you were getting those rear channels. It was a perfect setup. It was their demo in their room that they designed. Who knows how well this will perform in sort of an average home. But I could say without qualifier, I have never heard a soundbar without physical rear and surround channels produce this kind of enveloping environment.
So would you say, I mean, they're looking at the prices to be determined, but they're assuming it's going to be at least $3,000, right?
Somewhere around $3,000, I think, is what they're anticipating.
I guess the big question remains is $3,000 could buy quite a good discrete speaker system, and in fact, probably smaller than this system when you think about it, because you could either do in walls, in ceiling, which we usually do as a last resort, or you could do bookshelf speakers mounted on a wall with a powered or two powered subs. At this price, you could have the receiver, everything. A package, basically a complete package. You could get an RSL 5.1 or 5.2 system and a receiver for less money than this, as an example. I mean, that's going to be kind of a hard pill to swallow when you're looking at competing against a discrete system. Don't you agree?
Yeah, and if you're serious enough to drop $3,000 on a home theater, unless you absolutely cannot spare a single inch more than you need to of floor space, unless you absolutely cannot tolerate the little bit of complexity that it takes to set up either powered speakers or a standard audio-video receiver, you can get an equal amount of sound for less money with less, let's call it setup and configuration considerations, if you go with sort of a typical discrete speaker system. And you're right, small speakers now, like the RSL speakers that you mentioned, those are no bigger than your fist or a can of Coke at the end of the day, most of the time. It may not be your favorite speaker for stereo listening, but for surround duties, it's perfectly adequate.
I would also beg, ponder the question that, does this kind of a product, since it's relying on reflections, does it have a very narrow sweet spot? Are you going to be able to get that simulated surround behind you and above you at a wide area, like on your entire couch, or is it just going to be at a very single sweet spot? One person gets it and the rest of the people kind of get whatever.
So I gave up the sweet spot on the couch and went in late, and there was about a 45-minute wait is what it took for me to stand in line to listen to this soundbar. 45 minutes of just standing there waiting to get in there. I did a little bit of listening to some of their headphones while I was doing it. But long story short, I went in last because I knew that way I wouldn't be locked into the couch, and so I was actually in a standing position, and I kind of wandered back and forth from the leftmost seat to the rightmost seat of the couch. The surround field definitely did collapse a little bit, but it didn't disappear entirely. It didn't collapse into a single point. It just got a lot less distinct.
Okay, well, that's good news. So it sounds like it's promising, especially considering it's Sennheiser's first attempt at doing a soundbar or any home speakers, as far as I'm aware of.
Yeah, if it's their first foray, I haven't heard of anything before this. They've knocked it out of the park. The question is, for $3,000, how many are they going to sell? And who are they going to sell them to? And I guess that just remains to be seen. Probably won't be you, and it probably won't be me.
I got you. Okay, so why don't we talk about the next soundbar you heard? I think it was a Nakamichi Shock Wave. Not the Shock Wave like the Transformer, but Shock Wave.
Yeah, maybe there's a copyright issue there. So Nakamichi has a Shock Wave series that we're listening to. What's officially the 9.2 channel version. It comes with 2 subwoofers, yes, dual subwoofers, and it also comes with 4 surround speakers in addition to the channels reproduced by the front. We'll actually be digging a little bit deeper into this. I have one here. We're doing some listening. They're working on continuing to improve the quality of this with some firmware updates, and one of the ways that they're doing this is by inviting people to take a listen to their product against the competition. So they packed this against the flagship Samsung soundbar, as well as the yet to be released in the US, but completely bonkers, over the top, $6,000 Creative Sonic Carrier. So if you thought $3,000 was a lot for a soundbar, Creative has a $6,000 soundbar, Although there's a 50% coupon out there right now, so the retail price might be a little inflated.
Yeah, I would think so. And the Samsung that you were mentioning, that's a very popular, it's the HWK950. That has the surround speakers and the wireless sub, and I think the whole package comes out to $1,200 or $1,300, right?
Yeah, I think I went to the website, and again, street price is a little bit different, but I think it's $1,300 on the website right now. So the Nakamichi in at $1,100 was just a tick under all the competition.
Right, and I've been doing some research on soundbars, and it seems that the market is generally in a gear between $500 to maybe $1,000 is the sweet spot for soundbars for most people. I think Nakamichi is kind of hitting that with the $1,100, but it might be a little bit of a tall pill to swallow to put all those speakers in the room, especially with dual subs. But really, if you're an audiophile, dual subs is the way to go because it's going to give you better bass integration across a wider listening area, and of course you're going to get better surround effects always with discrete speakers as opposed to trying to bounce the sound off the walls. So it looks like Nakamichi is trying to hit that sweet spot of good sound and good value. I guess what I'm kind of wondering is, how did the demo go? I mean, how did it compare to what you heard? The Samsung and the expensive Creative Labs?
Yeah, so we listened to Life of Pi, we listened to the Mad Max intro scene, we listened to, actually I said Amaze before with the Samsung, or excuse me, the Sennheiser demo, we were listening to Leaf, not Amaze, for those of you that know the Dolby disc. We did listen to Amaze, however, on Nakamichi. So this is what is clear. At least in the setup that we were in, which was a larger hotel, the ceiling was kind of not quite vaulted, but it had like a little inset in there, and the room was mostly open to the right-hand side of the seating position. The actual physical rear channels in this case were a must. From the very first demo, I listened to the three, and it was readily apparent which one of these did not have surround channels, which one was trying to use reflection or DSP to create those surround channels. And so it's not to say that that was bad, but right away that one was out of the mix for me. I didn't know which one at the time it was. It turned out to be the Creative. So the $6,000
soundbar
from the very first demo, because it has no surround channels, was out. If you got a square room, if you got 4 walls and a ceiling and it's perfectly aligned, then maybe it blows the pants off of everything else for $6,000. But if you have any sort of odd-shaped room, I would say you cross that one off the list. And gut check, having only heard it a little bit.
I hate to say it, guys, but if you've got that perfect room where you have all 4 walls, then 9 times out of 10, you could probably put discrete speakers in there and just blow out that $6,000 soundbar with a really kick-ass home theater system. I mean, it's just ludicrous to even think you're going to spend $6,000 on a soundbar, in my opinion.
So back to the soundbars at 1,000 and change now, back to Planet Earth. Here on Planet Earth, between the Samsung and the Nakamichi, at this point I still didn't know which was which. We went through the Mad Max demo, we went through Life of Pi, and out of the rounds, I gave the majority of the rounds to the soundbar that ended up being the Nakamichi. And at the end of the day, I did it for these reasons. Number one was the balance in the surround channels versus the front channels, that everything was relatively the same loudness level, and you could really hear this in Mad Max. When he speaks, there's a voiceover. That voiceover is supposed to come from a little bit all around you, but it's still supposed to be at the front of the screen. When the rear channels are too hot, it sounds like he's inside your head, and not in a good way.
Right.
And to digress a little bit, I used to do installs, and I went on an install once. We went to this gentleman's home, and I was shadowing the person doing the main install, and I found out that the gentleman had a mode that was set up, which some people might call all stereo or all channels on. In other words, it sends the same signal to every speaker in your house from the center channel to all your surround channels. And I started giving this gentleman instruction on how to make it so that it only came out towards the front when it's supposed to come out the front, and your surround channels only kicked in when they were supposed to kick in. And the person who I was shadowing kind of pulled me aside and said, "Stop it, don't do that. These amateurs that are listening, they want to hear all the channels on
all the time.
They paid for the surround channels. That surround channel better make noise every single time they turn the television on, all the time, every time." And I think that's how some of these soundbars come out of the box. They're with the rear channels way too hot so that you know you have a surround system, even if it doesn't sound like what it's supposed to sound like in a way that sounds good. So Nakamichi won for me because it was adjusted properly out of the box, and I checked and they said, nope, it's just at middle level. equidistant apart, your rear channels will be balanced to the rest of it. So you pull it out of the box and it's actually properly set up.
Yeah, I mean, in order to do a really good comparison, we would have to get these in our own sound labs and properly calibrate them. So, take it with a grain of salt. You did it as best as you could an apples to apples comparison. And so far, it looks like the Nakamichi might be a really good product to check out. And that's why we have one in for review.
Yep.
Okay,
so next up,
Yeah, you want to go to Polk, I would assume, right?
Yeah, so this was all at the Venetian, and then when you get over to the Las Vegas Convention Center, these are what I would call more consumer level, and sometimes we throw that out there as a negative, but it's not. It's just to say that it appeals to a broader audience, and they're typically less expensive products. So moving from the high end for the Nakamichi back into the LVCC, we have what's essentially I'm taking a look here, a $300 sound bar from Polk. It's called the Polk Command Bar. And the reason why they call it the Command Bar is it integrates what is one of the hot topics, which we'll be discussing in a lot of our videos, and that are smart home assistants. So the Polk Command Bar, if you know an Amazon Echo Dot, imagine you take a standard soundbar, you carve a little circular hole out of it, and you slap a dot right in the middle. That's exactly what it was. It just looked like somebody had implanted a dot into the middle of a soundbar, which is actually a good thing. Because if you're familiar with the look and the interface of the dot, you don't want any surprises. Somebody looking to get into a smart soundbar for the first time, that's one more level of familiarity and one less thing for them to learn how to operate. But what that means is this one soundbar can then control all the Amazon connected products in your house.
Now this soundbar, it comes with a wireless sub, but it doesn't come with discrete rear surrounds, right?
Correct. So you're looking at just the bar and the sub with the smart Amazon Assistant built in.
So it's kind of similar in terms of price and product type as what the Magnify Mini was last year. That was around $300 with the wireless sub. This one, of course, has the Amazon integration, and it's a little bit of a different form factor as well.
Right, and it actually serves as something you can speak to. It has microphones built in, whereas the Mini, the Magnify Mini, is a Chromecast device, and so you can address it from Google Assistant, but it itself is not a Google Assistant. You can shout at that Magnify Mini all day long, it's not going to answer you back. Whereas the Command Bar, you can ask it to play music, and it's going to play music. You can ask it to convert pounds to kilos, and it'll convert pounds to kilos.
I wonder if this is going to basically cannibalize the sales of the Magnify Mini.
It depends on what people are looking for, and it's certainly still a little bit larger than the Magnify Mini, but this is what it signifies to me. This is officially the end, at least for me and I think for a lot of other people, of Bluetooth in the home. The days of using Bluetooth in anything other than a portable environment, whether it's headphones or whether it's using speakers outside, for me, I'm done with it. I own 5 Amazon devices, I own 7 Google Home devices, and either one of those is better than wrestling with Bluetooth. It's more immediate, it's more responsive, it's easier to get set up. And so we've seen over the past few years that a manufacturer wouldn't dare put out an audio product without Bluetooth built in. And now we're going to see that they won't dare put out a product without some sort of smart assistant built in.
Interesting, guys. This is definitely a trend that's going to be happening this year and maybe beyond for sure.
And so that leads us to, we talked to Amazon, we've talked Google a little bit, we'll get more into it in other videos, but this leads us to a third contender, and that is Roku. There's a company called TCL. They've got a lot of heat lately because they had a very well-reviewed LED television. It was sort of a best buy right around that $600-700 for a 55-inch, I think is what it was going for. And the picture quality was blowing away some of the more well-known brands. And so TCL is really taking that heat and trying to turn it up, and now they have a partnership with Roku. It is the Roku Connect platform. For folks that have been listening to me, I know, Gene, you're real high on the Amazon Fire. I'm a Roku guy. I like Roku. If you asked me to pick one streamer, I'd pick the Roku streamer. And the reason why I like Roku is that it's platform agnostic. In other words, it doesn't try to put a certain company's media above another's. It's not going to tell you to go to Google Play instead of Amazon or vice versa. It's you type in Ghostbusters, it says, here's the 100 places you can watch Ghostbusters, pick whichever one works for you.
Gotcha. Well, I haven't really played with the Roku like you have. Since you've had both, obviously, that's, it seems like the Roku might be a better deal in that case.
Yeah, well, and I'm not saying, Roku versus Amazon. Some people are in that Amazon system, and it makes sense for them. But I think that the big difference here is that both Amazon and Google have tried to kind of be all things. They're going to control your lights. They're going to try to provide you birthdays for celebrities and whatever else you ask it. Maybe Roku will get into this also, but it seems like at least right now, Roku just wants to be a voice interface for your media, for your audio and for your video, which you know is what we care about most, at least right now at Audioholics.
Right.
So if that's the case, if they take everything that other folks are doing and they pour all that voice technology, that smart AI into just controlling your audio and your video, then they may actually pull ahead, at least in the home theater market, if that becomes easier, if it becomes more accurate in getting you what you need as quickly as you can get it.
I gotcha. Okay, well, I mean, it sounds like you got some good tech here. It seems like there's more emphasis this year on getting this kind of smart home integration into the soundbars more than just trying to throw in more surround effects. I mean, we're kind of, one or two of the soundbars had Atmos, but the rest of them are pretty much standard, either straight stereo or maybe some simulated surround without rears.
Yeah, I think that they've definitely hit the point where, at least with soundbars, they know that they've probably done some market research, and they know that consumers want ease of use and they want better sound than what's coming out of the television. And
that's a pretty low bar to set, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah. For you and me, yes, I agree. But hey, Gene, you go over to people's houses and they're still listening through the television speakers, and you know that you want to run for the door. So anything is better than that.
Sure, sure. Well, you know, I have a question for our YouTube watchers is, what do you think a sweet spot in terms of prices for a soundbar? How much are you willing to spend for a soundbar until it gets to the point where it's ludicrous and you're going to go with a discrete system anyways? And how big of a soundbar are you going to be able to put? I mean, most people are putting these soundbars maybe for convenience of setup and maybe for form factor, but now we're seeing form factors of soundbars that are bigger than discrete speakers. So I kind of want to hear what our YouTube followers think about that, and maybe great feedback for the manufacturers as well.
Yep, absolutely. We'll be following up this segment. We're going to be talking about some other trends that I've seen. Powered speakers were huge, not only from folks that have sort of specialized in that, but for some of the names that up until this point had only done passive speakers, home theater style speakers. They're getting more into self-contained power speakers. We're going to talk about traditional speakers. We're going to talk about displays. And then we're going to be talking about some more odds and ends and maybe some of these smart assistants that we've seen too. And all those are going to be coming up in future videos. So this is just sort of the tip of the iceberg with what we saw at CES this year.
Okay, guys, well, you heard it here. This is our first of many CES videos to come. Give us your comments down below. Let us know what you think. Let us know what products you're looking at buying this year, or you want to do some more research on our website that you want us to cover. And until next time, keep listening.